PD graduated nearly a dozen new officers today.
And it comes at a time when the New Orleans Police Department is dealing with a serious manpower shortage. Natasha Robin was there.
The NOPD gained 11 new officers today. Recruit class 196 graduated from the academy.
Second squad, out it.
The recruits were first pinned by family members. Then the ceremony began, where they heard from Mayor Cantrell and Superintendent Michelle Woodfork. This is the first class to graduate under the interim superintendent. We understand there were 12 individuals who started the class and 11 of them graduated today. Tomorrow also marks Superintendent Woodfork's first 100 days in office. Of course, NOPD manpower has been a serious concern. According to the NOLA Coalition, there are 930 NOPD officers right now in the force. Data predicts that if the NOPD does not fix some of its personnel issues and start hiring at a quicker pace, there could be as few as 830 officers by 2030. However, some say the situation could get better possibly this year.
And it's real important that you make your families proud.
The superintendent today said there will be more recruits this year than last, and she also talked about what has happened since she took office to better the department.
One of the first actions I took was to appoint new leadership for the 5 bureaus. Each appointment was made methodically and based on the strength of each person in their respective areas. Next, I introduced my crime plan with 3 major areas of focus: reduction of violent crime, retention and recruitment, and becoming sustainably compliant with the consent decree.
Blake Falls.
Some of the graduates today are from different states around the country, and 5 different languages are spoken among them.
I'm from South Texas, as you may know. Over there it's pretty calm. New Orleans I needed something different. I applied. I knew the risk is coming in, but I knew that I need to make a difference. I wanted to help. It's always been my dream to be a law enforcement, and New Orleans was the place to do it.
There are 18 recruits right now going through the academy, and they'll graduate in August. The next recruit class will begin April 10th, and the NOPD says it's expecting between 20 and 25 recruits in that class. Natasha Robin, Fox 8, Local First.